guys, it's Lizzie. So last summer I made a blog post, an open letter to psychiatrists, signs a bipolar girl, in which I went on a rant about things that psychiatrists do not understand about bipolar. So this video is going to be along the lines, but more specifics. 15 things psychiatrists get wrong about bipolar disorder. Now, there are some psychiatrists who understand bipolar disorder really well, but my experience with mental health professionals is they're more used to dealing with people with depression or anxiety, and because bipolar is more rare, they do not have real world experience with it, just what they learned in school. And a lot of times what they learned in school is just not updated information and goes directly against newer research. The first year I was diagnosed with bipolar, I spent every single night reading research like Google Scholar, and I would read actual research articles about studies of people with bipolar. So if you have bipolar, this could be really important information. So number one, we don't trust you. It's difficult for people with bipolar to trust psychiatrists or any type of mental health professional because they are prescribing us medicine that will change our brain chemistry, and in so doing, change our identity, change how we think, how we feel, change the essence of who we are. So that is a very difficult situation. A lot of people with bipolar just go off their medicine a lot. I know I recently have been pushing back seeing my psychiatrist. I haven't seen her for 2.5 months. I just keep skipping appointments, getting medicine through other ways because I don't want to deal with my psychiatrist. So the main point in this is that they don't tend to explain what the medicines will do, the differences between the different medicines. I have to do a ton of my own research to understand how the medicine works, how it's affecting my brain, side effects, etc. So my advice if you have a mental illness is to push back and just ask a lot of questions and force them to explain things to you, and maybe just say, I feel like I'm gonna go off my medicine because I have bipolar and we all go off our medicine. It would really help me with treatment compliance if you could explain to me how the medicine is affecting me. I really need to know. I'm gonna link below a New York Times article about the psychological component of bipolar disorder and how it's completely removed from treatment, and maybe you'll feel understood by that. Number two, this is why I wasn't diagnosed for so long. The episodes are caused by things. They have triggers. And a lot of professionals have this idea that if there is a trigger for an episode, like you have reverse culture shock, or you just had a breakup, or you just had a death in the family, and that kicks in a depression episode, it's caused by that and not the bipolar. Or I've even heard of situations where someone will go into a manic episode because of doing weed or some other drug, and they'll be like, oh, the drug caused the manic episode, you're not actually manic. But from my experience, real life things happening in my life cause all of my episodes. And just general stress is the main thing that sets off all the episodes. But before I was diagnosed with bipolar, I had years of episodes of hypomania and depression, and it just wasn't able to be diagnosed because there were things causing it. Another thing that causes episodes, being in a new relationship, infatuation, it makes you euphoric, it's a drug-like feeling, it makes you more manic. It literally says in the DSM that they cannot be caused by something else, but that is wrong. Number three, manic episodes are actually really exhausting. I've talked with some psychiatrists and therapists who have this idea that when you're manic, you're superhuman and not sleeping for 2 weeks, but so much energy, only sleeping for 3 hours a night, but so much energy. And from my experience, it gets really exhausting being sleep deprived. Anyone gets exhausted being sleep deprived. So for a couple days, you might be full of energy during that time, but eventually you feel so exhausted. And just a side note, another thing, the DSM makes it sound like if your manic episode doesn't fit within this many days, it's not a manic episode, but I have manic episodes all the time that do not fit technically under the DSM criteria, but are definitely like, I'm manic right now. Like sometimes I'll be manic and I'll sleep for 12 hours, but then I'll be super manic all throughout the day. And technically that's not a manic episode, but it is manic. I'm acting manic. Everything else about it is manic. So just the whole idea of how you're not exhausted when you're manic, just all the nitpicky criteria you do not have to perfectly fit into to be bipolar. Number four, this is the craziest one. Self-reporting doesn't work. Self-reporting doesn't work to diagnose someone with bipolar. They have stats that people with bipolar have to go to 6 different mental health professionals, be wrongly diagnosed with unipolar depression before being diagnosed with bipolar. So they've been to tons of different professionals, they fielded questions trying to see if they're bipolar, and it somehow doesn't work. And it makes sense. If you're being crazy in your behavior or in your thoughts, you don't realize what it's like to be normal. So when they're asking you different questions, think of a time, fill in the blank with diagnostic criteria, it's really difficult to identify that when the bipolar has set in your early teens. And your entire life since then has been this conglomeration of hypomanic, manic, and depression episodes. My experience is I do not have a normal unless I'm super medicated and lose all emotion. So some solutions that I would pose to the mental health field is that when someone's going into therapy or to see a psychiatrist, bring a family member, a roommate, a close friend, a significant other, and ask them questions about the person. I have no idea why that isn't the norm in psychiatry. It's bizarre. It's like we live in this oversaturated individualistic culture, and that's just blinded us from realizing how much self-reporting doesn't work. I was actually loosely diagnosed with bipolar by my ex-boyfriend's therapist he saw 3 years before I was actually diagnosed with bipolar. So if I had just gone to a psychiatrist with my boyfriend then, I would have been diagnosed. Something else, maybe this is too expensive, but we should find a way to make it cheaper. So they can do brain scans of someone who is depressed who has bipolar. And depression in bipolar, the brain looks different than depression in someone with unipolar depression. So you could simply do a brain scan when someone is depressed and be like, oh my gosh, this person is bipolar. This person just has depression. It seems really black and white and obvious. I don't know why that isn't used more. I just have vivid memories of a therapist trying to diagnose me with bipolar 2 years before I was actually diagnosed with bipolar, and she was asking me all these questions. And the fact was, I've been in a hypomanic in and out episode for the past year, and so I thought that was my normal. I would just always stay up till 3 a.m. and get no sleep and be fine on no sleep and talking really fast, and that was just my normal. Number 6, bipolar is an addiction. A lot of psychiatrists always make sure you're not addicted to drugs or alcohol, super normal. It's hilarious every time I see a therapist or psychiatrist, a new one, and I tell them how I don't do drugs, never drink, work out every day, eat vegan. They're like, oh my gosh, how is that possible? Because everyone with bipolar has an alcohol problem, doesn't take care of themselves. I sleep 9 to 10 hours every day. I try to reduce stress in my life. I actually am healthy, and they're shocked. But the thing that a lot of them don't seem to realize, and this goes back to number 1 about not trusting professionals, just intrinsically part of the illness, the manic episodes in bipolar are this dopamine rush, and it's like a chill form of heroin. So being bipolar is an addiction in itself to not be on medicine and to want to go manic, even if mania is completely destructive to your life, even if it's really scary being manic, even if it destroys relationships with other people. Just intrinsically, the neurochemistry of what it is like to be manic is a drug, and so you're addicted to being off meds. And that's something that I've never been coached on by a psychiatrist or therapist. And you'd think if you're trying to help someone not die of bipolar, which is my main issue and why I get angry about the incompetency of professionals, there's a 1 in 4 suicide rate and 1 in 2 people with bipolar attempt to kill themselves. There's a 9 out of 10 divorce rate for people who are bipolar. This is a really, really serious terminal illness. And so it'd just be really convenient if when I was first diagnosed, it just coached me and explained to me what bipolar was. When they find out I don't do drugs or alcohol, they're like, cool, we don't have to deal with an addiction along with bipolar. But bipolar intrinsically is an addiction. You're always dealing with an addiction. And so I think therapy for someone with bipolar should be exactly how you do therapy for someone who is an alcoholic or addicted to drugs. I wrote a whole blog post on the whole addiction part called I'm an Addict. Well, it's Addict is the poem. I'm gonna link it right here. It just explains my experience being really manic and why I go off meds. Number 7, it is not just about manic and depression episodes. There are parts innate to your identity that are kind of in common between people who are bipolar. And these are things that would never make the DSM. Psychiatrists have straight up told me that I'm wrong. But like I said, I have spent hundreds of hours reading studies about bipolar. Through my YouTube channel, I read thousands of comments, thousands of emails talking to me about bipolar. bipolar, I'll make a video and be like, this happens to me in bipolar, hundreds of comments, oh my gosh, me too. There's certain things about being bipolar, like we have a really close relationship with music. There's like a constant hypersexuality, tend to fall for people really fast, so passionate in relationships. My argument is that you're always going to be different your entire life. You're always going to be more creative, more intense, more passionate, more dangerous, more impulsive. There's always these core parts of bipolar that will always be a part of you no matter how much medicine you're on. It's not just like you can get rid of it with medicine, you really can't. And I think when you try to make it so black and white, like you can contain it in one manic episode, one depression episode, other than that you're normal. There's mixed episodes that constantly happen. I feel like for me, I always have symptoms. Within the past year, I always have symptoms even on medicine. There's never a time when I'm not having some sort of bipolar symptom. There's like mini breakthrough symptoms when you're on medicine, and I feel like the treatment process completely ignores that. So a lot of people who are dating people with bipolar will message me with relationship advice because they're like, I'm dating this person who's bipolar, they went into detachment, suddenly lost all feeling for me, broke up with me, and this is the 5th time that's happened. And so in therapy or the psychiatrist, no one told the person with bipolar that you'll go through feelings of detachment all the time with the person you're dating or married to. Like no one talks about that. And also just this constant impulsivity is another thing. I could make a whole video about parts of bipolar that aren't in the DSM, that aren't part of an episode that you always have to deal with. Really vivid dreams is another thing. I've been having nightmares this whole month and it's been just like I almost die, I'm burning in fires, I see people I know die, just like really violent, vivid nightmares constantly, and it like affects my entire life because I wake up and I feel like I just went through the Hunger Games and I have vivid images of it for the next few hours, and it's really hard to feel normal and to not feel overstressed because of the dreams. How do I deal with those dreams? You know what I mean? Like there's so many parts of bipolar that even when you're medicated, even when you don't have a full out manic or major depressive episode, your bipolar is still majorly inconveniencing your life. Number 8, you can predict it. The only psychiatrist who's ever been aware of this is actually my best friend's mom, who's a psychiatrist. So sometimes I'll talk to her about my bipolar, and one time she asked me, are you going up or down? So she asked me like, which phase of my bipolar am I in? And after that, this was a conversation maybe 8 months ago, I started thinking through kind of like which part of an episode I'm in, and a lot of psychiatrists and therapists I've talked to have literally told me that you cannot predict it. It randomly is happening. There's nothing you can do. You can only be medicated. But my experience just intensely analyzing, self-reflection, journaling, mood tracking through the years, I can tell when I'm about to go manic. I can tell when I'm becoming less manic. I can tell when I'm going into depression. Like, you can feel when you're gradually going into an episode. Maybe you guys have more competent mental health professionals than I do. I don't know. I find the most incompetent professionals. It's crazy. But the point is, there are rhythms to it, and if every single day you track down how much sleep you got, what kind of dreams you had, oh my gosh, that's one thing psychiatrists have literally fought back and told me I'm wrong. I can tell based upon my dreams what kind of episode I'm in. When I'm in depression, I have really menial, boring dreams, like I'm just going about basic tasks throughout my day, but in my dreams. Whereas when I'm manic, I have these nightmarish, I'm in the Hunger Games, burning in a fire type dreams. And so I can tell which episode I'm about to go in by my dreams. Number 9, going off medicine is logical. A lot of psychiatrists are just belittling when you go off meds or when you stop showing up to your appointments. It's as if someone with heart disease just went off their heart disease medicine, but it's a lot different because of the psychological component. So my experience is that when I'm on too much meds, it numbs my brain, makes it so that I'm incapable of feeling emotions and being passionate and being in love, just basic parts of being human. I'm not myself anymore. I literally do not feel like myself when I'm on too many meds. So that's the key. You can just lessen the meds, do a bit less meds. And so I feel like what happens is psychiatrists make it seem like very black and white, like you have to be medicated. And then people feel like they can't ask questions because number 1, we don't trust you. It's difficult to trust you because you literally just throw meds at us without explaining anything. So then people go off medicine because they want to feel manic again because it's drug-like, and no one told them this was an addiction, that part of bipolar is being an addict. I feel like psychiatrists should just tell you, like the first appointment, hey, if you feel like you're being numb too much, let me know and we can make the meds a bit less, not as intense. Like my current psychiatrist literally told me, Right now, I know you're having a lot of breakthrough symptoms, but most people with bipolar don't want to be numbed too much. They want to feel a lot and be intense because they're bipolar, but be medicated at the same time. You know what I mean? But some psychiatrists have this idea you need to be super medicated, and then they're surprised when clients just ghost them and completely go off meds. Number 10, we are not wrong for loving being bipolar. I actually love that I'm bipolar. Yes, I hate that I'm bipolar. A lot of times I think it's hell. I cry a lot because I hate being like this. I question God's existence. In the past I have because of mental illness and all these things. So it's really awful. It's a horrible way to live, and I've considered not even having children because I don't want to bring people in the world who have a 1 in 4 chance of being bipolar. And I know that's very stigmatizing. I just thought that right when I got diagnosed. But the point is, yes, I hate this. It's awful. It's terrifying being diagnosed with a terminal illness at such a young age. It's horrible, yes. But I also love it. It's part of my identity. It makes me really passionate and intense. I go into these writing trances. I'm so happy. I fall in love in this really deep, intense way. I'm able to feel people's essences. I have this extreme empathy where I'm just affected by everything around me. And so I love being bipolar. I love how I am emotionally, physically, intellectually because I'm bipolar. So I wouldn't give this up. And literally mental health professionals do not know this, and they want to like erase our bipolar almost. There are components of our personality that are because we are bipolar, and that's okay. It's okay to like being bipolar. The ancient Greeks thought that mania was a gift from the gods. They saw bipolar people as being like gifted by the gods. Number 11, we need to understand it, and for treatment, it's healthy for people to understand they're bipolar. I have never been recommended by any mental health professional, and guys, I go through psychiatrists and therapists so fast. I will go to someone and be like, you're horrible, change, like all the time, because I'm trying to find a good doctor or a good therapist. And I've gone in so many different states as well. So my advice for you, if you are bipolar and your mental health professional doesn't understand this, just research for yourself. Just go onto Google Scholar and type in anything you want to know about bipolar and read the studies about it. Read books about it, read the comment sections of my videos, and get to know other people who are bipolar. Watch some of the 50 videos I've made about bipolar. For treatment compliance, for you to stay on medicine, it's important that you understand what is going on. And just day to day in dealing with symptoms, your medicine will not get rid of mania or depression. So day to day, it's like, wow, I'm feeling so insecure all of a sudden. I feel so scared. I feel anxiety right now. I feel like all this stuff in my life is going horrible. I feel used, and I feel like I don't have self-esteem. If you suddenly feel all of that, it's because you're in slight depression. And so it's because you're in slight depression all of a sudden. And so it's helpful to be able to identify those emotions and be like, my perspective on this situation is only that because I'm in depression. And same with mania. If you suddenly want to dish out like $600 on buying something, which I haven't been like this for years, but if you suddenly want to spend a ton of money, or you suddenly are falling for a guy so fast who you just met, who you were never attracted to before, you could be like, oh my gosh, these are manic symptoms. Maybe I don't actually want to do that. You know what I mean? It's not just like you get medicated and you're fine. You need to identify all these things. You need to be able to understand yourself so intensely within it, do a ton of journaling, researching, reading. My experience with mental health professionals is they have not encouraged me to learn more about bipolar. Oh my gosh, this is so snarky. Number 14, if you are currently in a manic episode, that is a manic episode. I've had psychiatrists before deny that a manic episode is real because it doesn't perfectly fit the confines of the DSM. So when I was in college, I would have these manic type things that would last like a day. And I would suddenly have so much energy, only sleep for 3 hours, wake up so excited, ready to start the day, so energized. And I was like writing so much, reading so fast, talking so fast, like I was manic. But since it wasn't for a longer length of time, it wasn't manic, I wasn't bipolar, I couldn't be diagnosed. So essentially, if you have a psychiatrist who's being really nitpicky about diagnosing and not valuing your treatment and your safety, and instead just being really legalistic about diagnosing, go to a different doctor. Number 15, self-diagnosis can actually be a real thing. I diagnosed myself. I self-diagnosed And I was right. And if I hadn't fought for my diagnosis and fought for my treatment, I would have continued to be off meds for years and years and continue to have dangerous, life-threatening thoughts and behavior. Like I said, this is a terminal illness. You can die from being bipolar. The reason I think this is because all the time when you go to a doctor, it's because you've been having symptoms of something. So it's like, oh, I've been having chest pains recently. Maybe I have a heart problem. Oh, I can see on my arm I have this new like growth that is kind of brown. Maybe I have skin cancer. Your tooth starts to hurt, so you go to the doctor because you might have a cavity. You know what I mean? People don't just at random show up to a psychiatrist and get tested for being bipolar. Someone goes to any type of doctor's appointment because they are having symptoms and through common knowledge know that this symptom could be of a specific illness, and that's how they get diagnosed. So I feel like especially among our youth, I get lots of messages from people who clearly have depression, clearly are bipolar. Since I am bipolar, there's just certain things that if going on at the same time, it's clearly a manic episode. And so it's like if you have a manic episode, you're probably bipolar. And I've just dealt with a lot of them telling me that their parents are not taking them seriously at all and are like, you're just trying to self-diagnose. And it would be like, well, if my tooth was really hurting and I went to my mom and I'm like, hey, I think I have a cavity, that would be taken more seriously than a mental health diagnosis. I've heard professionals and read professional articles and even seen YouTube videos of people with bipolar belittling the idea of self-diagnosis. And I'm not saying just because someone researches that means they are bipolar, but I think we should encourage people to understand bipolar and to go to a professional if they think they may be bipolar. A lot of people have self-diagnosed through my videos, then talk to a professional, and it's been real. And the other thing I really want to encourage is to fight for your diagnosis. I was told I was not bipolar by someone, and then a week later went to another professional, said the same exact information, and I was bipolar. And I know I said earlier too that self-diagnosis doesn't work, but I think it really depends on the person. When it's come out all the way, some people are just more ambitious about researching and understanding what it is. But people who are not at all sure that they have it and haven't researched and don't know how it manifests, those are the people who are never gonna think they have it and who are not gonna get diagnosed by the therapist. I went to maybe a dozen psychiatrists and therapists when I had my bipolar symptoms out who did not diagnose me, so keep going back and trying to get diagnosed if you really are suffering and have this. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!